Good evening to everyone joining us this evening. My name is Councillor Mohammed Samra and I welcome everyone to the June 2026 Council meeting. I declare the meeting open at 6:32 p.m. Maribyrnong City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pays its respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I remind everyone to please switch off their phones or turn to silent. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy, however, your presence may be recorded. In accordance with Council's governance rules, meeting may not be photographed, filmed or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I advise that there are no apologies this evening. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? Great. In accordance with Local Government Act 2020, do any councillors have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda items? We now move to public question time. Public question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Members of the public can submit a maximum of 3 questions prior to the commencement of the meeting. As Chair, I will decide who to answer the questions. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. I will be watching the time and will remind councillors when that 15 minutes has arrived. Okay, we'll now move to question time. So we've had a number of questions were received in regards to McIvor Reserve. I advise that under clause 52.9 of Council's governance rules, like questions have been grouped together with single responses provided as follows. I will read all questions out and pass to the relevant director for a response. Dermot Cullen has asked, Maribyrnong City Council and Westgate Basketball say the proposed basketball stadium at McIvor will not meet the shortfall of courts in the council area. What additional green or brown sites is council considering building more basketball stadiums on, over and above the McIvor Stadium strategy? We have a question from Sherry Libby. Our state representatives have indicated that they have never been asked by Maribyrnong City Council to provide a brownfield site for an indoor stadium. If this is correct, can you please explain why the council has failed or refused to do so and whether it will commit to doing so now? Question from Mary Giorgio. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name. Is council willing to give further consideration to the alternative sites that have been suggested for the proposed basketball stadiums in order to avoid and minimize harm to the local wildlife that currently reside there? Question from Kylie Mikkel. A recent interview with a gentleman who has spent most of his career building stadiums revealed stadiums were never built on green space. Will council reconsider the current master plan for McIvor Reserve and reinvestigate the many unused brownfield sites? We have a question from Bronwyn Dara. What other spaces were investigated for the basketball stadium and why were they rejected? We have 3 questions from Gordon Johnston. Does council stand by its past comments regarding the importance of green space? And if yes, why is McIvor Park being targeted for major stadium development without seeking an alternative location? A second question from Gordon. Please specify the exact steps council has taken to find an alternative site for the stadium being planned for McIvor Reserve. Third question from Gordon. Will council undertake to make public all actions and documents regarding finding an alternative site for the stadium plan for McIvor Reserve? Question from Kristen Stark. How much research has been done on acquiring a brownfield site as an alternative site for the proposed new basketball stadium at McIvor Reserve? Second question from Kristen. What brownfield sites have been considered for the new basketball stadium proposal for McIvor Reserve? Question from Josh Attard Dixon. Why has council refused to work collaboratively with both the Westgate basketball community and the local residents intending to preserve McIvor Reserve? Surely a brownfield site for the stadium that would be a win-win solution for all parties. Second question from Josh. Shouldn't the ratepayers and local residents directly affected the most by this proposal be the ones who the council has at the forefront of their mind, not community who live long distances away or even in different municipalities? 2 questions from Jill De Vos. Has council ever discussed acquiring a brownfield site for a basketball stadium? Second question from Jill. Why does council not consider the old Footscray Hospital for the basketball stadium, considering it is a more central location? Question from Rachel Wolf. Why is the proposal stadium being built on a green site and not a brown site? Ed Gribble. Are you able to revisit options for a brownfield site for the basketball court to ensure a win for all? The West needs clear air. Second question from Ed. Have you directly consulted with local residents who live in the proposed basketball site to gather their feedback?
I think Patrick Jess is going to answer those, Mayor.
Patrick, can I get you to please respond?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. And just to note, there's been many meetings and questions received and answered on this topic over recent years, and so I can confirm that Council commenced the process of developing the new McIvor Reserve Master Plan in 2021 to meet the current and future needs of both sporting clubs and general park users. Having taken all environmental, social, economic and community needs into consideration, Council resolved on the 29th of March, I think 2023, to adopt the McIvor Reserve Master Plan, which incorporated an indoor sports facility. This resolution also required that Council commence schematic designs and the necessary site planning and due diligence to enable upgrades to the reserve for state and federal funding to support the implementation of the master plan. So the schematic designs are now being considered by Council tonight, and if endorsed, would then be the subject of a process of further community engagement.
We'll now move to further questions. We have a question from Shari Libby, sorry. Can Council advise of the exact number of trees and shrubs that will be cut down to implement the stadium plan, and for each set out the genus and species, the approximate age, the height, whether it is flowering, and what native animals currently use it as habitat or for connectivity? We have a question from Mary Giorgio. Given Council's commitment to protecting local wildlife by the introduction of a cat curfew, I would like to ask if you have considered the potential loss of wildlife and its habitat at McIvor Reserve, resulting from the removal of trees for the proposed basketball stadium. Another three questions from James Johnson. Exactly how many existing trees are going to be cut down at McIvor Reserve for the proposed building and car parks? The agenda references an evaluation of trees to be cut down at McIvor Reserve for a building. If this assessment placed a higher value on mature trees, doesn't that suggest that established mature trees can't simply be replaced with new ones as planned? With the benefits of nature and trees described in Council's nature plan and urban forest plan, why are we losing outdoor space and mature trees in a neighbourhood that has the tunnel smog stack on one side and a diesel spewing data centres on the other? Two questions from Kylie McKell. Council has been advocating its support for growing green space and in particular tree canopies. Can you please explain how Council can support a project at McIvor that reduces precious green space in this municipality and removes more than 100 mature trees? Instead of investing ratepayer funds into drawing up plans for an unfounded stadium, could Council consider completing and sharing a traffic impact assessment? A basic analysis by a basketball parent forecasts hundreds of cars flooding local streets every hour. Question from Brown Darragh. What measures are being put in place to help reduce respiratory illness in children when a large number of mature trees are cut down in the council in an area that doesn't have many trees and that will increase in population due to Bradmill? Question from Jane Walkfield. What environmental impact studies were completed in terms of the impact on the habitat of abundant wildlife and birdlife at McIvor Reserve before going against local wishes to save the most precious of green space? Question from Christine Stark. In regard of the new basketball stadium proposed on McIvor, has there been any research done to find out what impact the loss of green space will have on house prices, local lifestyle, air quality and the environment? Another question from Josh Attard Dixon. How has Council risk assessed the impact on local community regarding traffic and parking when the reserve and all residential streets is already at full capacity during local sports. Question from Ed Gribble, have you completed traffic projections on local roads near the proposed site? Question from Annie Craig, has Council conducted an independent assessment of the projected car vehicle movements associated with the 6-court basketball stadium during peak periods, particularly when basketball competitions overlap with football, baseball and bowls activities occurring at McIvor Reserve? Another question from Annie, what is the net change in the total number of car parking spaces under the proposed draft compared with existing parking provisions? Another question from Annie, has Council undertaken modelling to confirm that the parking supply will adequately meet demand? I'll ask the Director of Infrastructure to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. And again, Council has received previous questions relating to trees, environment and traffic in previous meetings, and Council did consider the environmental, safety and traffic impacts in detail prior to making its determination. I'm going to refer you to the questions to the 29th of March 2023 agenda for comprehensive details in response to this.
We have a question from, we have two questions in which are grouped together. One from Dermot Cullen. In the last 12 months, what state or federal budget processes has Council requested funding for development of a basketball stadium at McIvor Reserve, and what has been the outcome of these requests? Another question from Mary Giorgio. I very much apologize if you are in the room. As a local resident who will be significantly impacted by the proposed 6-court basketball stadium at McIvor Reserve, I would like to ask what sources of funding Council intends to utilise to meet the associated cost. Can I get the Director of Infrastructure to respond, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So Council has been advocating with both the state and federal governments since the March 2023 Council resolution, and in fact the project forms part of Council's advocacy plan 2025 to 2028. Council has also allocated $2.5 million within the draft 2026-27 budget, which is being considered at tonight's meeting and pending matching commitment from the state government.
Thank you, Patrick. We received a number of questions. We received in regards to Beevers and Bell Reserves. I advised under Clause 52.9 of Council's governance rules. Like questions have been grouped together with the following response provided. A question from Alison Boast. 3 questions. First one, regarding the Beevers Reserve toilet consultation, Council's published aggregate data shows over 51% opposed, around 41% supported, and 8% unsure. Why did the administrative process push this project to a vote in April when your own data showed a clear majority opposed? Second question from Alison. Look, the Coronation Street traffic report contains no assessment of child pedestrian safety on Wales, Empress, Shackle or Shernside streets. It measures only intersection wait times. What specific child pedestrian safety assessment on those streets was completed before April? Third question from Alison. Regarding the Beevers Reserve toilet proposal, the petition presented tonight carries over 250 signatures disputing the consultation process. Why vote in April before resolving a clear 10 percentage point lead for localised community opposition? We have 3 questions from Reece Tolson. Every Wells Street online respondent opposed the toilet, 24 out of 24. Nearly 80% of Wells Street flyer respondents opposed it, combined with a massive petition against the toilet. At what point does immediate resident rejection stop being dismissed as diverse views? Second question from Reece. Council stated it offered to meet concerned residents regarding the Beevers Reserve toilet. At the same meeting, an officer said further consultation was premature. When will residents next to the proposed toilet footprint actually be consulted on its location? Thanks for the reminder, Celia. Councillors, I'll ask that we extend public question time. All those in favour? We'll extend for additional 15 minutes. Yeah, question 3 from Reece. Council's data shows 51% overall opposed the toilet and 2/3 in person opposed the road closure. Why did the administrative process push ahead to a vote in April when majority of rejections across your own consultation channels carried zero weight on this floor. Question from Deep Nguyen. I walk Wells Street with my child daily. The traffic data set for the Beevers and Bell project came from just 1 week in September 2024, the final week of term 3. Were any counts taken during normal school term conditions before voting yes on the permanent Coronation Street closure? Question from Annie Impala, which is the last on this grouping. On 19 May, Council commissioned a full safety study for another suburb covering school access and pedestrian impacts. On the same night, it noted the Kingsville Coronation Street report with no child pedestrian safety assessment at all. Why the difference? 2, from Anne. Regarding the Coronation Street closure, around 2/3 of in-person participants explicitly opposed it at Council's own community engagement sessions. Backed by a nearly 250 signature petition, what level of localised opposition would actually make this council pause? So we've had a third question submitted by Mr. Impala, which was in the form of a statement. While as council's governance rules allow for the provision of public questions, it does not provide for statements to be made, and therefore the statement will not be read during the meeting. Can I please pass on Director of Infrastructure to answer those grouping questions?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So when planning for both Beevers and Bell Reserves, council officers undertook a rigorous engagement process supported by expert input to inform recommendations for both concept designs. Consideration extended beyond the immediate street to the broader neighbourhood and suburb, aligning with council's open space strategy in recognition of the need for increasing the footprint and access to high quality open space, particularly in Kingsville and Seddon. At its meeting on 21st of April 2026, Council unanimously adopted the concept designs for Bell and Beevers Reserve in Kingsville, having regard to the outcomes of the community engagement process and also a range of informed assessments. The adopted concept includes a proposed public toilet and the closure of Coronation Street. In reaching its decision, Council gave due consideration to a number of factors, including but not limited to community engagement feedback, traffic impacts and safety assessments. Notably, as part of the concept design process, an independent traffic assessment was undertaken to evaluate the impacts of closing Coronation Street on surrounding residential streets. That assessment concluded that the closure would result in minimal changes to travel times for Coronation Street residents and only minor increases in peak traffic volumes on Wales, Empress, Churnside and Webb Streets. Given the comprehensive nature of Council's deliberations at the April 2026 meeting, it's not proposed to provide further responses to questions regarding whether Council has had due regard to specific elements arising from that engagement process or the associated technical assessments.
We'll now go to a question from Kim Alexandrovsk. Question 1. Has Banco Group sought a further extension of time beyond the 2026 deadline for the Forges Footscray planning permit? And what is Council's official position on granting any further extension to this idle site? Can I get Mike to please answer?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. The planning permit has not been extended beyond the March 2026 deadline for commencement, and the permit has expired. The owner or the occupier of the land has 6 months from the point of expiry to request a further extension. Council has no position on granting further extensions. Any future request will be assessed in accordance with the information provided and a well-established framework of principles for considering extensions to permits.
Thank you, Mike. Second question from Kim. Beyond the 300% vacant land rate differential, what specific municipal fines or enforcement actions is Council actively using to compel the owner to maintain this derelict site to an acceptable community standard? Can also get Director of Planning.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Council has powers under its local law relating to unsightly land, dilapidated buildings and dangerous land. There are also enforcement powers under the Building Act 1993 which can be used if buildings are unsafe.
Question 3 from Kin. Given the Temporary Fencing Act as a liability shield for the developer while its visible neglect encourages antisocial behaviour, what specific enforcement plan does Council have to compel total site clearance when the permit expires in 2026? Can also get Mike. to answer.
Council's powers are limited to specific legal grounds, and while Council can monitor the site and act where there are safety, building, local or amenity issues, it cannot require total site clearance simply because the planning permit has expired.
We have a question from Anna Brown. Question 1, the Welcome Crew model promises early identification and response, better coordination, visible presence and improved day-to-day conditions in public space. How will the Welcome Crew perform these functions on the ground? Can also get Director of Planning and Environment.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, the Welcome Crew will provide a regular and identifiable Council presence in the Footscray CBD. The Welcome Crew presence is civic and service focused. It's not a compliance, surveillance or enforcement presence. The full details of the Welcome Crew model are detailed on pages 412 to 414 of the officer's report, and we also outline it specifically in attachment 3 to that report.
Question 2 from Anna. The proposal for the Welcome Crew speaks to awareness of movements and trader support. Traders may want a surveillance program so they can call in police quickly. How will Council ensure the Welcome Crew is not used to surveil vulnerable groups, be a link in a chain of enforcement? Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. The Welcome Crew will play an important role in helping vulnerable community members get access to services by facilitating referral pathways. It will not have any enforcement powers, and if traders or anyone observe a crime taking place, they can and should contact the police.
We have a question from Angelo Ramnak. Question 1, the Footscray Welcome Crew purports to be supportive of all users of Footscray. How will the Footscray Welcome Crew ensure equitable outcomes for everyone, not just the traders who are explicitly referenced throughout the proposal? Mike?
Thank you, Mayor, and hopefully the report tabled today for Council outlines exactly that in more detail, but the model references all of the users of the Footscray CBD, including visitors, residents, vulnerable community members, service agencies and traders, and the model combines place management, trader and visitor support, activation support, public space observation, issue identification, referral and coordination. Again, it's not a service that is specifically focused on traders.
Question 2 from Angelo. What values will inform Council's decision-making matrix when rights may be in conflict, especially between human rights of the most marginalised and asserted rights of traders to make profits which they claim are undermined by the presence of marginalised residents? Can I also get Mike to answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The Welcome Crew will receive training in human rights and charter obligations, trauma-informed practice, cultural safety, homelessness awareness, mental health and alcohol and other drug awareness, de-escalation, referral pathways, safety and escalation procedures, local services and council programs, and scenario-based practice. Given the relational and emotionally complex nature of the role, staff will also require appropriate supervision, debriefing and support. The Welcome Crew model has been developed in line with the Victorian Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, Act 2006. The refined model strengthens Council's human rights-based approach by making clear that the Welcome Crew is not an enforcement or security service. The model is based on dignity, respect, non-discrimination, cultural safety, support for vulnerable people, and proportionate responses to issues in public space.
Question 3 from Angelo. The Welcome Crew's referral function risks becoming a box-ticking exercise that further undermines only marginalised people's trust in the system. What is the point of making referrals to services the Council knows cannot provide services due to already being over capacity? Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Referrals are not intended to be a transactional or box-ticking exercise. People often present with multiple and often complex needs, which are rarely addressed by one service alone. The Welcome Crew's model is to build trust, understand the person's circumstances, and help connect the right services and agencies around them over time. This approach is about improving coordination, strengthening relationships with local service sector, and making sure people are not left to navigate the system alone.
We have 3 questions from Shifra Bluestein. Question 1, Foley House, a golden standard supported accommodation service for people with complex needs run by the Salvation Army, has quietly been relocating residents in preparation for closing by 30th of June 2026. When did Council first learn about the closure of Foley House? Can I get the Director of Community Life to answer?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The Maribyrnong Homelessness Response Network was informed in December 2025 of the Salvation Army's decision to close Foley House post an internal review. The Salvation Army has confirmed that they are committed to supporting the transition of residents to ensure that they have access to accommodation which is aligned with each individual person's need, including case management support post-transition. Further, the Salvation Army has confirmed that they will remain in place providing support for as long as it takes for suitable allocation of accommodation for each of the residents to occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. What action is Council taking to advocate for a sustainable funding solution to ensure the ongoing operation of Foley House? Specifically, to which decision makers and stakeholders is Council speaking to find a way for the service to continue operating? And also get Director of Community Life to answer.
Thank you, Mayor. Council recognises the concern that this has created across the community. Foley House has been predominantly funded by the Salvation Army in recent years, and decisions regarding its future operations sit outside of Council's authority. That said, Council officers are maintaining contact with stakeholders involved in the transition process, and the Salvation Army remains a key partner within the local homelessness response network that Council leads. Council will continue to raise concerns regarding the loss of supported accommodation in Melbourne's West through our ongoing advocacy with state government and sector partners.
Question 3 from Shifra. Melbourne City Council funds dozens of places in transitional accommodation in partnership with other organisations in Make Room. What tangible action is Council taking with its $245 million budget to add crisis, transitional and supported accommodation stock in Maribyrnong? Can I get Director of Community Life to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. Council recognises the critical need for more crisis, transitional, supported and affordable housing across Melbourne's West. While the provision of homelessness accommodation is primarily a state and federal government responsibility, Council continues to advocate for increased investment and work closely with housing and service partners to strengthen local responses. Council is also currently developing a housing strategy which will include a focus on increasing affordable housing opportunities within Maribyrnong. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep. Thank you, Maria. And I would like to reiterate that this Council is very much committed to ensuring that our community remains affordable. By 2050, our population will grow by more than 53%. And it is a very serious issue and a reality that some in our community might be priced out. So we will take every endeavour and every advocacy route to ensure that we have a greater supply in public and affordable housing. And to reiterate Maria's points, we will work with the Salvation Army to add value where we can to ensure that those that need support are supported. I would now extend question time. We've reached our 15 minutes. Can I get councillors that are in favour vote? We'll extend question time additional 15 minutes.
Community facilities deserve fair pay, and its reserve has not been funded for the last 8 years.
We have a question from Lauren Ginn. 1, the Mayor has claimed responsibility on social media for increased police and PSOs in Footscray. How does Council say advocacy for increased policing constitutes a rejection of enforcement-based approaches to poverty and marginalisation, which is Council policy since February? Can I get Director of Planning, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Council's position is that supporting vulnerable people with dignity and addressing community safety concerns are both necessary, but they are not the same issue. Advocacy for appropriate police and PSO presence is focused on public safety and criminal behaviour, including people who may seek to harm or exploit vulnerable community members, while Council's Welcome Crew model remains engagement-based, non-enforcement and focused on connection, coordination and amenity.
Thank you, Mike. Question 2, the Mayor's advocacy appears to be in direct conflict with the Welcome Crew model and Council's recognition that punitive responses are ineffective and unjust. What discussions and deliberations took place between Victoria Police and the Mayor and Maribyrnong CEO? Can I get Director of Planning to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. Council does not accept that advocacy for appropriate police and PSO presence is in conflict with the Welcome Crew model, as police remain responsible for public safety and criminal behaviour, while the Welcome Crew is a non-enforcement engagement-based council service. Discussions with Victoria Police are part of ongoing coordination about community safety in Footscray, with operational policing decisions remaining a matter for Victoria Police.
Yep. And to add to that, Council is not the police. we're not social services. We understand there's a huge non-council side to this, but we understand that our community expect us to take initiative and lead where we can, and we'll continue to do that. And I believe we're punching above our weight. And I'm a big believer that two things can be true at the same time. We can support our community, and we can ensure that we play our role where it comes to a safe community. Question 3, what accountability measures exist where a mayor engages in advocacy and achieves change that contradicts council's position where no one, other councillors, council officers or community members have been consulted? How does council say this is democratic or proper? Can I get Director of Planning to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. Council does not agree with the premise of the question. As advocacy for appropriate police and PSO presence does not alter Council's adopted position or the welcome crew model. Council decisions and service changes remain subject to the proper governance, officer advice and council decision-making processes.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. We have a question from Fred Madden. Question 1, Council's traffic assessment for the Coronation Street closure was based on counts taken during a single week in September 2024, the final week of school term 3. No counts were taken during normal midterm conditions. Did councillors know this before voting yes? Would any councillor like to respond? Question 2. Council's traffic report for the Coronation Street closure confirms more cars on surrounding streets, yet omits the Wales Street playground entirely. Did any councillor verify child safety at that playground was assessed before voting yes? Would the councillor like to respond? Question...
Councillor Yengi, are you trying to respond or no? Oh.
So I can read it, and then decide if I can respond to it. What page is it?
It's page 6. I'll go to question 3. Tonight's petition of nearly 250 signatures cites 2 facts from Council's own report. Coronation Street traffic data was from the end of term 3 and the Wells Street playground was omitted. Which councillors read both facts before voting yes? Councillors wish to respond? We'll go to question from Diep Nguyen. Question 1. The traffic brief identifies increased vehicle movements into Wales, Empress, Shackle and Shernside streets, but contains no assessment of pedestrian safety impacts. Did councillors verify a safety assessment existed before voting yes on April 21st? Question 2. The 250 signature petition labelled tonight warns that child pedestrian safety on Wales, Empress, Shackle and Shernside streets were omitted from traffic report. Which individual councillors can explain to local families why that was not enough to make you vote no? We have a question from Shari Libby? Libby. I apologise. Libby. Question 1, can you provide the exact square meterage of the current version of the proposed indoor sports stadium complex at McIvor of each of its proposed car parks and state how that compares to the estimates for both previously given by this council during earlier community consultations? Can I get Director of Infrastructure to please respond?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. As outlined in in the council report on tonight's agenda, the ground floor footprint of 7,600 square metres is slightly below the 7,700 square metres identified in the master plan, so the footprint is slightly smaller.
That's not all the question. That's got the car parks as well, and all the grounds.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I'll have to take the car parks on notice and come back to that question.
And we'll ensure that you receive that question answered via email. So having...
Sorry, Mayor.
Yes?
Would it be possible just to skip back to the Beevers, the questions on Beevers? Sorry, I was a little slow in responding there.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you wanted to give...
Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick response. The short answer is yes. I read all of the information that was provided to councillors to help us make that decision, and decided that on balance, the decision that we did make was the best decision to make for not just the local residents, but also the people who come to Beevers Reserve and who will undoubtedly come to the new playground as well. So taking all of those things into consideration and balancing them against each other, I still decided to vote yes in favour of the two plans that were presented to council that night.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yep. We'll now go to...
Mohammed. I think Pradeep was first.
Sorry, I finished reading the question.
Yeah, Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, digest. No, I mean, I would also just add that, also just add that where it's not just that
do you want to bring the mic closer to Elena?
resolved on the parks and the master plan, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to explore existing traffic issues, other possible implications of these projects. We're also working on, obviously, the integrated transport strategy, so there will be more work coming beyond what is kind of the immediate concerns of the master plan around some of these. And I met with some residents just this afternoon to further progress that conversation. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Councillor Tawari?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly answer the question in my own perspective, because I only got these questions today. So, and I want to tell, I think it was two people who asked the questions, that I did read the reports before they came, and I acknowledged at the time that there was significant opposition from nearby residents. I'd raised it in that meeting as well. But no, I wasn't aware that the traffic counts had been done in the final work week of term 3. And also I didn't pick up that the Wells Street playground hadn't been specifically referenced in the assessment. If I had known those details at that time, I might have asked some more questions. So, but that being said, I don't think anyone around this table voted with the intention of making children less safe. You know, we made a decision based on the information and recommendations before us at the time, provided to us by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Councillor Ingi?
Thanks. I'll echo some of what Pradeep and Bernadette have said, just with regards to the assessment that was done on the last day of term, last week of term, which was definitely something that I don't think we were across. But just having said that, you know, we get a lot of reports that come to us at briefing, which a lot of us read, and we often do ask lots of questions at briefings with regards to what's brought forward to us. And, you know, our officers always, you know, do their due diligence, and there's a level of trust there with the work that's presented to us and the amount of research and assessments that goes into it. So I think, like Pradeep mentioned, a lot of us, you know, made a decision based on what was presented to us, but also just taking in what Bernadette said about, you know, that balance with what was presented versus, you know, some of what the community has said, and factoring in the uses of that space, the people that be using it, which are not only just those within that specific area, but also more broadly as well. And at the end of the day, ultimately, you know, we are responsible for making decisions that we believe is in the best interest of the community, so that sometimes means that it may not suit specific individuals in a specific locality, but if it's in the broader interest of the community, then that is a decision that ultimately we will make.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Yangi. We'll now move to question by Cheryl Nichols. Question 1, the Beevers and Bell project is subject to an active Victorian Ombudsman complaint. How can councillors in good conscience vote tonight to commit ratepayer funds to a toilet and road closure whose approval process is currently under independent regulatory scrutiny? Question 2, these two questions have been grouped together for the similarity. Given that the community has lodged an active Victorian Ombudsman complaint regarding the Beevers and Bell reserves process, why has no councillor moved to defer these specific project lines tonight rather than forcing a vote on contested budgeted items? Can I get Director of Customer and Corporate Services to respond?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, and thanks to Cheryl for your question. I can advise Council that as a close of business today, Council has not received any correspondence from the Victorian Ombudsman in relation to this matter, indicating that there is an active complaint or request for information. Of course, it's possible that this may come in at a later time, and if and when this occurs, Council will provide its response at that time. I will also note, however, that it is not generally the role of the Victorian Ombudsman to stop, change or direct Council to any particular decision, but of course they can seek information, investigate and make recommendations.
A third question submitted by Ms Nichols was considered to be in the form of a statement. While as Council governance rules allow for the provision of public questions, it does not provide for statements to be made, and therefore the statement will not be read during the meeting. We have a question from Fletcher Bob. Question 1, in relation to agenda item 11.3, community safety through better public lighting, why is the motion limited in a lighting review rather than an incorporated broader crime prevention through environmental design assessment, which is widely recognised as best practice? I'll respond to Fletcher. The motion focuses on lighting because it is a practical and visible measure that Council can influence directly. Council already applies crime prevention through environmental design principles as standard practice while planning and delivering public realm projects. Question 2 from Fletcher. Before Council resources are committed, how will the proposed lighting report be integrated with Council's existing community safety, public realm, transport? Thank you. We will extend. Councillors are asked that we extend question time by another 15 minutes. Raise your hand. Yep, we'll extend another 15 minutes. To go back to Fletcher's second question, before Council resources are committed, how will the proposed lighting report be integrated with Council's existing community safety, public realm, transport, placemaking and infrastructure planning frameworks to ensure it complements rather than duplicates existing work? So, Councillors, should the motion be supported, the report will likely act as an audit and gap analysis, consolidating what is already known, identifying where deficiencies exist beyond current project areas and clarifying advocacy pathways to external authorities where responsibility sits outside Council's remit. Question 3, will preparation of the proposed lighting report involve professional consultation with Victoria Police, local laws, community safety specialists and relevant service providers to ensure the causes of safety concerns are properly identified before recommendations are made? So, as it relates to lighting and safety, yes, we'll be consulting with relevant authorities. We have a question by Madeline Searle. 3 questions. Question 1, at the community panel for the flood study on 15th of June 2026, Melbourne Water noted separate specific engagement with Council regarding the study. Would Council give a readout of this engagement, including disclosure of reports, submissions, etc., to inform the community? I'll get Director of Planning and Environment to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. And Madeline, hopefully I get this response right, but certainly happy to clarify outside of this forum. Council participates in the working group and project control group for the Maribyrnong River Catchment Flood Mitigation Study, and staff have received an individual briefing from Melbourne Water this year. And Council representatives advocate and make representations in these meetings and working groups in line with Council's flood advocacy priorities, resilient rebuilding programs, insurance viability and case handling, flood mitigation infrastructure, emergency early warning systems and local economic impact reporting.
Thank you, Mike. Question 2 from Madeline. Council announced the recruitment of a community connector to support community engagement for the Flood to Flourish program early 2026. Would Council please advise the status of appointment of this community connector? Can also get Mike to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, following a competitive recruitment process involving Council and Monash University, a community connector has been appointed who is a local resident and commenced in April 2026 to support community engagement as part of Monash University's Flood to Flourish project.
Question 3. Council advised 237 of the 466 flood cards prepared for the trial in the Maribyrnong Township had been distributed at the 17th of March 2026 Council meeting. Would the Council please update distribution numbers and disclose Council's arrangements to get remaining cards to residents? Can also get Mike to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. As of today, there's 254 property cards have now been delivered to properties within the Maribyrnong Township, and Melbourne Water is providing additional data based on floor-level surveys to inform an update of several of those cards. Once finalised, the remainder of the cards will be distributed via a door knock with Vic SES, and we anticipate that to take place by the end of August of this year.
Question from Kate Breen on behalf of Reimagining Old Footscray Hospital Community Group. Question 1, June 2024, Council endorsed an advocacy plan for the former Footscray Hospital site, including plans for 3.5 hectare park, 30% social housing, expansion of Brendbill, and transfer of the old psychiatric building to Council. Does Council still support this advocacy position?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this remains the adopted position of Council, which guides ongoing advocacy efforts for the site and surrounds.
Thank you, Mike. Question 2, can Council advise whether it has received written advice from Development Victoria that Council-owned land, including the Brendbill Children's Centre site, will be included within the scope of any integrated master planning for the former Footscray Hospital precinct?
Thank you, Mayor. To date, Council has not received written advice from Development Victoria that Council-owned land, which incorporates the Brendbill Children's Centre site, will be included within the scope of any integrated master planning for the former Footscray Hospital precinct. Officers remain in ongoing discussions with Development Victoria in relation to this site and continue to advocate for increased early years services within this precinct to enable the state government's Best Start, Best Life reforms to be delivered. Officers will continue to liaise with Development Victoria and the Brendbill Children's Centre regarding any future developments on this site as it pertains to early years. With regards to the other section of Council-owned land, which was used as a car park, Development Victoria will be including this within the scope of the integrated master planning for the former Footscray Hospital precinct.
Thank you, Mike. And it is important that Development Victoria's open space complements our own to create a wider open space network. And Council is keen to maintain and possibly take management of that space. Question 3 from Kate. Has Council sought or does it intend to seek with Victorian Government funding for the delivery of a major public park and associated infrastructure identified in the existing Footscray Hospital site advocacy plan, including works on Council-owned land? Can I get Director of Planning to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. In short, yes. With any significant community infrastructure projects, we always seek to explore opportunities to develop them in partnership with other levels of government or service agencies. The delivery of the park on Council-owned land is no different in this case.
Yep.
Excuse me, Mayor. Sorry.
Yes.
Do you mind if I just responded to
Feel free.
sort of generally to those questions? I just want to reassure the Reimagining Old Footscray Hospital Community Group that Council hasn't wavered in its support for achieving the outcomes that are in the advocacy plan that was developed during the last term of Council. It lines up directly and beautifully with the community aspirations for the site. When Council was briefed by the department, Development Victoria, we conveyed our thoughts and those of the community in no uncertain terms that we couldn't be separated on this issue. We do want to see those outcomes for housing, affordable housing in particular, public housing and open space and active transport on that site, and that's our expectation. So just wanting to clarify that with the community.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We'll now move to a question from Brian Sanders, which are 3 questions. First one, last month the city held a flag-raising ceremony for Outer Hobart Day. As the proud father of a young gay woman, I would like to ask the Mayor to explain why he was not in attendance per Council's social media post. I want to say, unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Outer Hobart flag-raising ceremony as I am human and I came down with a cold, which I was out at that time, but I had very much intended to be there, as I recognize the importance of the event for our community, but I wasn't well enough to attend, and thankfully we had our amazing Deputy Mayor there representing Council. As Mayor, I regret not being able to join the ceremony and acknowledge the significance of marking Outer Hobart and standing alongside our LGBTIQA+ community. Question 2, does the Mayor support LGBTQI+ equality across our society? I want to say, yes, I do. I strongly support equality and inclusion across our society, and I believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, respect, and fairness, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. As Mayor, I'm committed to fostering a community where people feel safe, valued, and able to be themselves. Supporting the LGBTIQA+ community is an important part of that, and I will continue to advocate for inclusion across everything we do as a council. Final question from Brian. Will the Mayor commit to attendance at future Pride-related events? I want to say Maribyrnong is and will always be a safe and welcoming place for the queer community, and I'm proud to support that through my role as Mayor. I recently had the opportunity to meet with the Council's LGBTIQA+ Advisory Committee, and I value the insights and perspectives they bring in helping us ensure our work reflects the needs and experiences of our diverse community. This is also reflected in our broader strategies, including the Intercultural Maribyrnong Strategy, which centres the voices of our community. So I will continue to make every effort to attend future Pride-related events and to be present in supporting and celebrating the queer community. I look forward to continuing that engagement over the course of my term, and I want to thank Brian for his questions. We will now move to our final 2.
I just wanted to say something. I guess just in case Brian's wondering as well, I wasn't there at the flag raising ceremony either, so I thought I'm sure he probably noticed that neither of us were there, but I wasn't there either because I work full time and I had a work commitment that day too. So just so we're all clear, in case anyone's also following this, I wasn't there, but I do support our LGBTQI+ community, and I will hope to be there in future flag raising events as well.
As LGBTQI+ myself, I think probably the first councillor that is out and proudly gay, and I do encourage all councillors to make sure that they do attend these events when possible, when they're not working or if they don't have a conflict of being sick and things like that. So it is a really important thing, and I think it's I think it's great that council do all of these fantastic events. And I think it's fantastic that council are really supportive of diversity in our community, and I think we're very lucky to have a council that is so supportive. So it's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. We'll now reach our 2 final questions. Question from Jill De Vos. My grandchildren's hobby is dance because it is not basketball, cricket or AFL. The council does not provide any building or recreation reserve for them. Why do we have to publicly fund buildings for other sports such as basketball at the expense of our green spaces? Can I get Director of Infrastructure to respond?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. The master plan balances a range of community needs, including indoor sports, but also access to open space. The stadium is designed as a multi-purpose facility and it would be available for a wide range of activities, including dancing.
go to our final person. Question from Rachel Wolf, 2 questions. 1, does the new draft plan cater for an increased need for passive space for the residents from the Bradmill development and probable increase in use for dogs? And I get Director of Infrastructure to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So the master plan was adopted alongside and planned alongside consideration of the Bradmill development and in response to the needs of the Maribyrnong community more broadly. And just to add that the Bradmill development does also include additional open space as part of it.
Yep. Question 2 and final question. What was the square meterage of the dog park pre-Bradmill works, the square meterage when the Bradmill works took some of the dog park, and the square meterage now under the current proposed plans? Can I get Director of Infrastructure to respond?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I'll need to take that question on notice and come back to you with an answer on that.
I know I said we're up to our last question, but this is our last one. We have a question from Glenn Yates. There's been a notable increase of fishing line and hooks being disposed along the Maribyrnong River Trail. Sadly, multiple native birds have been euthanized as a result of them coming into contact with fishing line and hooks. Can local laws enforce littering fines if witnessed? Can I get Director of Planning to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This came in at 6:20 this evening, but I'll have a go. Absolutely, we can enforce littering. I guess the key part to this question is if witnessed. So we need to have our staff down there to see that incident. I know Councillor Meredith has been a very strong advocate for fixing this issue up. So we'll do our best.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I want to acknowledge the work that the Deputy Mayor has been doing in this space and advocacy. Second question from Glenn Yates. Is it possible, please, for Council to install no littering signs along the Maribyrnong River Trail, which also specifies fishing line and hooks and call out that fines apply and how much that fine would be? Mike?
In answer to the first part of the question, it is possible to improve the signage there and call out that fines will apply. How much the fine would be, I'd be making that up. But we are limited by the amounts of fines that we can, or the amount that the fine does cost, but I can get back to Glenn on that number.
Final question from Glenn. Is it possible, please, for a team member from Patrick Just's team and or Mike McIntosh's team to connect with Zoos Victoria to apply for Seal the Loop fishing tackle recycling bins that Council can install at fishing hotspots? Both HBCC and City of Melbourne are using them. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Patrick Jess has kindly volunteered to do this one, but no, absolutely we can follow that up and see if we can't improve that signage. It sounds like a really good initiative. Apparently we already have, so Pat tells me.
Yep. Before we end, I'll give Deputy Mayor a chance to
Thank you.
respond.
I'd just like to, for me, the loss of any wildlife is deeply painful, and it was really sad to see the 2 cygnets and one of the mother swan, not just a swan, it was like the mother swan of the cygnet, have to be euthanized because of fishing hooks. And also just the other day, yesterday, there was a dusky, beautiful little bird with fishing wire around its leg as well. So, and I know that there's a great community out there now that are working together, really going along the riverbanks, finding lots of hooks, finding fishing wire and things like that. And so I know that there's a group, the Maribyrnong River Wildlife Protection. I encourage everybody to get involved with them. They are doing great work trying to create that change to save lives, because it's, and that's basically what it is, saving lives. So these are lives of our beautiful wildlife and incredibly important. So shout out to all those people that are spending a lot of time walking up and down the river, finding hooks and fishing line, and please, if you can, go and do it. It's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Thomas.
I wanted to go back a question. I forgot. I wanted to respond to Jill's question before this one, before Rachel's and Glenn's.
Yep.
So is that okay? About the question about dance.
About dance, yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to acknowledge Jill's question because I'm not sure perhaps that the response kind of maybe responded to it in the way she was asking. I think she's right. I can't recall that council actually provides any sort of bespoke or facility for dance or other similar types of recreation. Most of our recreation facilities are for specific, active kind of ball sports and other things, and often our open space, our green open space for sports are also very specifically for things like soccer or basketball or footy and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to let Jill know that she's not dreaming, and that is the case, that we, as far as I can tell, we don't have any bespoke facilities for dance.
So thank you, Councillor Thomas. And, I acknowledge as our community continues to grow, we will need the infrastructure to match that growing community, understanding that our community is diverse and, people enjoy different things. And one of our advocacy priorities right now is Creative West. We want to bring a performance arts theatre to the heart of Footscray and cement Footscray as the creative heart of Melbourne's West. And I know the Footscray Community Arts Centre as well do great work, and will continue working and supporting the work that they do. Okay, councillors, that concludes public question time. I declare public question time closed at 7:33. We'll now move to agenda item 6.1, confirmation of minutes. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on 19th May 2026.
Call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Please, councillors, cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. Agenda item 7.1, Audit and Risk Committee, May 2026 biannual report. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council endorsed the Audit and Risk Committee May 2026 biannual report shown at attachment 1.
Call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. I advise councillors that in accordance with the council's governance rules, a councillor may read the petition text, but is not permitted to speak to the petition. We'll now move to our petitions. Agenda item 8.1, petition, stop the Coronation Street closure and Beevers Reserve Toilet in Kingsville. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Meredith.
That council receives and notes the petition, stop the Coronation Street closure and Beevers Reserve Toilet, Kingsville, and to request that the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate response.
Call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Tawari. I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. I advise councillors that there are no planning reports to be considered at this meeting. We'll now move to agenda item 10.1, adoption of annual budget 2026-2027. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas. Yeah.
Sorry. That Council 1 notes the proposed budget 2026-27 submissions shown at attachment 4. A, having considered the budget submissions received and those heard at the budget submission hearing on 25 May 2026, resolved to include the following items to receive funding for the 2026-27 financial year. $50,000 towards active transport bicycle infrastructure with the outcome to be reported to Council by December 2026. $20,000 for Maribyrnong River and Waterways Association to expand community outreach and strengthen strategic alignment. $14,800 for the Open Kitchen Pilot Project. Provide a one-off allocation of $10,000 to each neighbourhood house below, equivalent to 2025-26 funding, and request neighbourhood houses to undertake a review of funding, governance and partnership arrangements during 2026-27 to inform their long-term sustainability and future partnership arrangements. Angus Neighbourhood House, Braybrook Maidstone Neighbourhood House, Duke Street Community House, West Footscray Neighbourhood House and Yarraville Community Centre. B, thank all submitters and advise submitters in writing of the outcome of the proposed budget 2026-27 submission process. 2, adopt the annual budget 2026-27 and the subsequent 3 years as shown in attachment 1. 3, declare $125,351,067 as the amount which Council intends to raise by general rates and charges. A, the general rate be raised by the application of differential rates. B, the following differential rates amounts for the rating period commencing 1 July 2026 and ending 30 June 2027. Residential properties 100%, 0.00265,800. Commercial properties 135%, 0.00358800. Industrial properties 160%, 0.00425,300. Vacant land residential 200%, 0.00531,600. Vacant land commercial 300%, 0.00797,400. Vacant land industrial 300%, 0.00797,400. Cultural and recreational properties 100%, 0.00265,800. 4, declare a municipal charge of $20 for each rateable property for the rating period commencing 1 July 2026 and ending 30 June 2027. 5, declare a waste management service charge for waste collection and disposal on each rateable property and non-rateable properties where the service is provided for the period commencing 1 July 2026 and ending 30 June 2027. A, waste management charge 1 to 2 services, $292.30. B, waste management charge 2 to 3 services, $352.30. 6, grant a rebate to a maximum of $236.30 to all City of Maribyrnong residents eligible to receive a concession through the State Government Municipal Rates Concession Scheme. 7, each owner of rateable land who meets the eligibility criteria, a rebate of 50% on residential vacant land whose current differential is 200% to residential ratepayers. Noting this rebate does not apply for the State Government Fire Service levy where A, a certificate of occupancy permit has been issued within 18 months of the completed building demolition, or B, the development has been impacted by a construction company being placed into administration and a certificate of occupancy permit has been issued within 48 months of the completed building demolition. 8, note that interest on unpaid rates will be charged in accordance with the Local Government Act, currently 10%.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Yengi, are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yep, I'll just say a few more words. Because I'm sure other councillors will have things to say. So this year's budget considerations have, I think, proved particularly challenging with restricted revenue and almost universal increases in costs to deliver services. Balancing the budget against community expectations has been difficult. Despite this, Council and Council officers have prepared a budget that responds to the feedback Council consistently receives through multiple consultations around provision of open space, of bike riding and pedestrian infrastructure, of sustainability and environment, and city amenity and safety. We've also managed to increase the amount of the community grants budget, which is always oversubscribed with submissions, and so continuing our commitment to festivals and community activations. Additional support has been provided also to our neighbourhood houses to help them continue their important work. And I know that earlier on tonight, councillors received an email from the Footscray Rangers because we had to make a very difficult decision about not going ahead this year with some planned improvements there, but put in more of an interim arrangement. And that example just shows how balancing a budget and providing the necessary services and community infrastructure across the board to all the various groups and communities within our community remains an ongoing challenge for council, but we are absolutely doing our best with the support of our officers who, do all the hard work of putting constructing the budget for us to consider. So I do want to sincerely thank everybody who sent in a submission, everybody who read the budget, gave us feedback, and to our officers as well for all of their hard work. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just make it brief. Firstly, just starting off by saying thanks to our community, particularly all those who provided submissions and also those who actually came to present to us at the budget hearing a couple of weeks ago. Thanks for taking the time to go through the budget. We know it was, a pretty large document to go through. Everybody provided, some extensive feedback, so that was great to receive. Just wanted to say, I think if there was ever a time that I wished I had a magic wand, this was probably that time, because it was really, really hard, working through this budget and just the process of trying to decide what to keep and, what we would progress at a later stage. It was just really, really challenging. And yeah, I really wish, that we had a well of funds to be able to deliver on everything that our community needs. But nonetheless, we still worked very hard to deliver a balanced budget that responds to the cost pressures whilst maintaining the services that the community relies on. So yeah, thanks to our team, the officers who I know have had to pull some very late nights to pull together this budget as well. Mark and his team, thank you very much for your tireless efforts. And yeah, I hope that, we'll keep getting better at this and it'll be easier. I know it won't, but yeah. And just quickly echoing what Bernadette mentioned earlier, I'm really excited that we were able to increase some of our spending for active transport bike infrastructure as well as the community grants. I know that it's not like $55,000 isn't, a lot of money, but for a lot of small organisations, even $5,000 grant is, goes a long way. So I'm really glad that we were able to do this for this year, and I'm hoping in future years we might have a, bigger community grants program.
Thank you, Councillor Yangi. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Lam.
Councillor Thomas and Councillor Yangi mentioned about that, thank you, the team. Thank you, Mr. Lucas Gosling and the team worked really hard about provide this budget. Very difficult to make decisions. While we only have a certain amount of money like that, we would love to share with all other community who really working so hard for to support the community as well. But sometimes our hand is tied. That's how much we have, and we can share with that. And I really thank you so much for the community come and presentation to our budget hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
Yeah, echoing pretty much what other people have said around trying to maintain our pre-existing services, which is obviously challenging when we're short on money and it doesn't keep pace with CPI, but also that we're working on municipal maps and other things to help us be as transparent as possible around the budget. We know it's, there's a lot in there, and we want to really make sure that we can give progress reports on capital works projects and other things that the community is obviously really interested in.
I'm sorry, Councillor Pereira. Can I get you to move your thing a bit closer? Thanks.
Even closer. And just so that we can be clear on the timelines for projects and how we're funding them, usually from a number of different sources, so that we can manage expectations and show the community that we are committed to making progress in every respect. And yeah, just also in conjunction with the integrated transport strategy that's going out for consultation tonight, we're obviously trying to demonstrate that we're hopefully on the verge of making significant progress on our transport obligations, including our active transport obligations, which we know the community has been crying out for a long time. So hopefully together this will set us up for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Tawari.
Thanks, Chair. Tonight we're being asked to adopt a budget that tries to balance the many needs and expectations of our community. No budget is ever perfect, and every councillor around this table, I'm sure, would have projects and priorities we'd love to fund, but the reality is there will always be more worthy projects than there is money available. And I found this is one of the hardest parts of this role. But I want to thank everyone, like the other councillors, who took the time to make submissions, attend meetings and advocate for the things that matter to them. Those voices help shape the decisions we'll make. There's a lot in this budget and I'm pleased to support, and it continues to invest in projects and services that improve safety, accessibility and opportunities across our municipality. But I would be dishonest if I didn't acknowledge some of the disappointment as well tonight. I know that President Nathan was here tonight, as Councillor Thomas mentioned, and I've heard from many members of Footscray Rangers and all the other affected clubs and the wider Hanson Reserve community. Like many of them, I'm also disappointed that the Hanson Reserve Pavilion redevelopment is not proceeding in this year's budget. I know how much work has gone into the project, and I understand the frustration this decision has caused for those who thought they were finally going to see it delivered. But at the same time, I acknowledge the financial pressures Council is facing and the difficult choices that have had to be made. I also want to thank officers for working with the clubs and putting interim measures in place, including the temporary change facilities and other improvements, so the upgraded sports fields and lighting can continue to be used. And to Nathan and everyone who's contacted me tonight and came in, it's not the end of the conversation. I'll continue advocating for Hanson Reserve to remain a priority in future budgets, and I'll work with my fellow councillors to explore every opportunity to make this project a reality. I also recognise that Hanson Reserve is not the only group feeling disappointed tonight. There will be other community organisations, sporting clubs and residents whose priorities haven't been funded this year. And to all of them, I genuinely wish we had more money to meet every need and deliver every worthwhile project, because our community deserves it. And finally, I want to thank council officers for the work involved in preparing this budget and my fellow councillors for their advocacy throughout the process. No budget will ever satisfy every request or deliver every project exactly when we'd like it, but we also have a responsibility to think about the long-term future of our municipality and ensure we remain financially sustainable. On balance, I believe this budget strikes that balance, and I look forward to supporting its adoption tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
I think everybody's said everything, to be honest. So, but I will just say a personal thank you to the officers for preparing the budget, and of course, I would love more money in the budget to do everything. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all, councillors, for speaking to the budget. I'll add a couple of words. As councillors have mentioned, it is a very competitive process. And this budget follows a robust engagement process, gathering over 1,700 community responses across 2 stages of feedback. And as Councillor Yengi mentioned, it is a process that began many months ago and beginning last year. Given the feedback Council heard, preferences for open space, cycling and pedestrian infrastructure, local infrastructure and amenity improvements, and focus on sustainability and environment. Progressing a few key major projects, such as the Request and Shorten Reserve, the Maribyrnong Aquatic Centre and Splash Park, progressing planning for Creative West, the Summerhill Road renewal, and also Footscray CBD upgrades, and also maintenance and repair of sealed local roads. And one thing I want to raise to the service is our investment for children and young people, which rated as a top priority in the 2025 annual community survey. Council has allocated $3 million to early years and young people, including $700,000 for the Maribyrnong River Children's Centre building works, $665,000 for the Maidstone Child and Family Centre site investigation and outdoor play space, and $75,000 for Phoenix Youth Centre improvements. And we also plan to spend just over $1 million on tree plantings throughout the municipality. And we also want to highlight that, we have a modest 11.5 million adjusted underlying surplus, which meets the Victoria Auditor General's requirements that ensures council is financially sustainable. With that being said, I will now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. Okay, councillors, there's been a change to order of business. With the consent of council, I wish to propose a change to the order of business in accordance with clause 19 of council's governance rules. Given the strong community interest in the McIvor Reserve item being considered this evening, councillors, do I have your consent to bring item 10.5 McIvor Reserve Indoor Sports Stadium schematic design release forward as the next item of business? If I do, can you please raise your hand? Yep, thank you, councillors. We will now proceed to agenda item 10.5. Agenda item 10.5, McIvor Reserve Indoor Sports Stadium schematic design release. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lam. Yep.
The office's recommendation that council, number one, endorse the release of the McIvor Reserve Stadium schematic design for the community feedback. And number two, not a further report will be presented to council following the community engagement process.
Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Yengi? Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the council like to speak to the motion?
Yes, briefly. McIvor Reserve is already a very important place for the sport and recreation in our city. So many people use it for the organizing sport and also for walking, exercising, and spend time outdoors. So council approved a long-term plan for the reserve in 2023. This plan including a building an indoor sports stadium to meet the future need. Since then, the council has done a lot of work. We now have a draft design for the stadium and early site study are completed. This means we are ready to show the planning to the community. The proposed stadium has 6 indoor courts over 2 levels. This helps meet with the high demand for indoor sports like basketball, netball, and volleyball. The design they tried to balance new facility with protecting open space. The building footprint is carefully managed and more trees are kept compared to the earlier plan. So the design also including space for the community use, flexible courts so different sports can happen at the same time. Change to reduce noise for nearby residents, a new layout for the dog park. This project is important not just locally, but across Victoria. It is supported by Basketball Victoria and Netball Victoria as a priority project. So the next step is to ask the community what they think of the design. Their feedback will help improving the design before council consider the final detailed plan. So this is a part of planning for the future. Our population is growing, and we need to make sure we have the right facility to support our community. I commend the motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
I'll just say a couple of words. So just echoing a bit of what Cook said, in 2023, the previous council resolved to advance the development of McIvor Reserve. And then in the following budget cycle, councillors unanimously allocated $50,000 in the 2025 to 26 budget to enable council to prepare the schematic designs for the site. So tonight, what we're really being asked is to endorse the work, the schematic design work, and to release it for community consultation. So this is the work that's been carried out as a result of the funding that was allocated in the budget last year. So I support this step because it reflects the commitment that we made in last year's budget, and it's essential that we now report back to the community and clearly demonstrate what has been achieved through that funding that council allocated. So I guess for me, this is what transparency and accountability looks like, which is basically delivering on our commitments and sharing the results openly, and then obviously being able to invite the community to help shape the next stage of the project.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas?
Thanks, Mayor. So first up, I just want to reiterate that I support council and government providing new facilities for indoor sports. However, proposing another consultation process for a project that has failed to bring our community together and that has divided our community since its inception is not a very smart move. This consultation process will not tell us anything we don't already know and will simply be another ordeal for really committed communities who likely agree we want indoor sports and open space to be forced to argue aside to respond to the consultation with no real delivery or funding identified to deliver it. This isn't fair. Our communities don't want to argue against each other about facilities we all care about. They are one community on this. We should instead be putting our energy and resources into finding a site that everyone can agree on, to exploring under and unutilised brownfield sites that can work for our community on so many levels. A site that doesn't create a deficit anywhere and adds to the community infrastructure that our community is seeking and deserves. Civic leadership is about making difficult decisions. There's no doubt that we need more indoor sports facilities just as much as we need to maintain open space. Let's work together to find a solution that works for all.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira?
Cook, you're still on as well, just so you know. Yeah. Eat the microphone, yes. I also support kids playing sport. I love sport. I played it as a kid, and support green amenity and communities coming together. I think our community does as well, and we can see clearly from the strength of the feeling that this proposal still isn't achieving the right balance. The project remains deeply controversial in our community for good reason. We're proposing to build amenity that our community would really benefit from on green space that our community also really obviously values. Without committed funding, without revisiting the outdated stadium strategy or budget position, and without having an honest conversation about other possible alternatives. We have other land opportunities that we have not been enabled to have a conversation about because of a fixation with this proposed location, including an abundance of underutilised and poorly utilised industrial land that could be delivering a better outcome faster. Instead, we're about to send our community into another divisive consultation that pits neighbour against neighbour, and that's not leadership, it's just passing the buck, and it's causing further erosion of trust in government, community and society. We often hear terms like the basketball supporters, the anti-stadium people, the McIvor Reserve supporters, and these are the kinds of damaging binaries that this has created. It's important to remember that these aren't different communities, we're all one community, and we all deserve better than another consultation with an unclear outcome, a lack of funding and a lack of alternatives being proposed that could actually bring us all together. I will always support community consultation, but the scope of this consultation is very limited. I'd rather do the hard work now and find a solution that everyone can be really proud of than inherit a bad decision and try and pass it off as progress.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tawari?
Thanks, Chair. I know this has been a contentious issue, and I want to acknowledge that from the outset. There are people in the community who have strongly supported this project, and there are others who don't support it or have genuine concerns about it. But I want all those people to know that their views have been heard and respected. One of the questions I've most heard now in my time in council, and even through tonight's public questions, is why can't this be built on a brownfield site? And for those watching online who may not know what that means, a brownfield site is land that has already been developed or previously used, such as an old industrial site, warehouse, or underutilised parcel of land. And in other words, somewhere that doesn't involve building on existing open space. I've been advised that if there had been a suitable brownfield site available, Council would have identified it and undertaken the necessary due diligence on it. This project has been worked on over many years, well before many of us were elected, and the reality is that no alternative brownfield site has come before me as a councillor. I also want to say that to my knowledge, neither I nor any of my fellow councillors have received a report, proposal or a viable alternative site from any external organisation that demonstrates another location that could deliver what is needed in this project. I confirm this with Councillor Thomas tonight as well. And if such a site had been identified and put forward, I think many of us, myself included, would have welcomed that discussion. We know indoor court space in Melbourne's West is at premium. Demand continues to grow, particularly from women and girls, junior participants and people who simply want the opportunity to be active, healthy and connected through sport. Too many clubs are competing for limited space, training late into the evenings or missing out altogether. No project of this size will ever satisfy everyone completely. There will always be questions about the cost, design, location, and whether it should happen differently. And those are fair questions to ask, and I respect those who have advocated passionately throughout this process. I also want to thank all of the residents who have taken the time to come here tonight, at previous meetings and throughout this process, to have their voices heard. Whether you supported this proposal or opposed it, you did so because you care deeply about your community and the future of the municipality. And to be honest, it's been really encouraging to see people so passionate and engaged. We often hear that people have lost interest in local government, but this process has shown the opposite. People have turned up, asked questions, written submissions, and stood up for what they believe in, and I think that passion should be acknowledged and respected. But I also think we have a responsibility to think about the next generation and the facilities they need. If we don't plan and invest now, we risk leaving future communities with the same shortages and inequities that people are experiencing today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Yep.
Councillor
Thanks.
Meredith?
I think this has been a really divisive topic. I love basketball. I've taught many students who love basketball, and I know how important it is for their health and well-being. But I also know how important green space is for health and well-being as well. And I think Councillor Yengi mentioned before that we sort of, ticked on some money last year. I was very fresh then and perhaps a little bit naive, but right now I'm not. And I think that, I think it's not the right space for a basketball court, to be honest. So that's it. I don't think it's the right space, my opinion. Sorry. I know you're very passionate.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Is everyone? I will add a few comments. This is an endorsed resolution, and we're continuing on that resolution. This project is about making sure our community has access to the facilities it needs now and into the future. We know that across Maribyrnong and the inner west, there is already a shortage of indoor sports and community space, and with our population growing, that pressure is only going to increase. What's being proposed here is a 6-court facility. That's not about overdevelopment, it's about getting the balance right. This is the scale needed to properly support local clubs, young people, families, community groups and schools, so they can train, compete and participate here in our city. And a lot has been said about basketball, but there's also netball, there's volleyball. I have spoken to people in our community that share with me. There was a mother, might have 3 kids, each playing a different sport, right? And having to go outside of our municipality for those facilities. Importantly, this is not just about the stadium itself. This project also delivers broader improvements to the reserve, including upgraded community space and a better, more functional dog park, making McIvor a place that works for more people in more ways. This design uses a smaller footprint, so we can protect and still protect open space while still delivering a high quality community facility. Just as importantly, the facility has been designed to work for the whole community. Multiple sports can run at the same time, events can be hosted there, and regular users can still access the courts. That flexibility is really important for a diverse and growing community like ours. This is about fairness and access. Indoor sport gives people a place to stay active all year round, regardless of weather. For many in our community, especially women and girls, people with disability, and our culturally diverse communities, that access can make a real difference. We're also not doing this in isolation. This project is recognised as a priority by key sporting bodies, which shows just how important it is, not only for Maribyrnong, but for the broader region. At the end of the day, this is about investing in community health, connection, and opportunity. It's about creating a space where people can come together, stay active, and feel part of something. And I want to reiterate what Councillor Tawari had mentioned. There are supporters for this. There are those that have concerns. And it's very important that we take a balanced approach, and I believe we have. And for those that mention a brownfield site, to reiterate Councillor Tawari's points, if we were presented with a brownfield site, I believe that would be considered, but considering the costs associated with remediation, acquisition, that could blow up the project tens of millions of dollars. And that's not even considering access, public transport. A lot of the users of this facility will be kids. How will they be getting there? Safety concerns. And importantly, it's about looking ahead. And I believe, the city of Maribyrnong is at a precipice. We have an opportunity before us now, so we don't be left behind as our population rapidly grows. But I would like to remind councillors that the question before us today is whether we continue on a resolution and let the community know about our updates to open for consultation. With that being said, I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll move to agenda item 10.2, Community Engagement Policy. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council endorse the Community Engagement Policy 2026 to 29, shown at attachment 1.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Tawari. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't expecting to move it, so I'll just find the policy itself, sorry. Just a couple of things to say, I guess, is that community engagement is one of the issues, I guess, that all of the councillor group is very focused on, particularly making sure that we hear from a broad range of people within our community, that we really work hard to go to where people are, to consult with people in their first language, to include people or groups that, like young people and children who are often excluded from consultation processes. All of those things are very important to all of the councillor group. And I think if you read through this policy document, you'll find commitments to some of those things and more that relate to how we will engage with the community, how we will report back to the community, which is also another issue within community engagement that is very important to us, is not just asking for feedback or asking for input and then you never hearing from council again. It's really important to us that we close the loop on all of our consultation processes so that the community knows just how their feedback has been used, to influence a decision, and if it hasn't been specifically used, why it hasn't. So thanks to everybody who, thanks to everyone who gave us feedback through the various engagement processes, and to our our council officers who have worked on this policy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Chair. I won't say much on this other than that community engagement is hard. People aren't always going to agree with the final decision, and sometimes they'll leave disappointed. I understand that because before I was a councillor, I was often the person writing submissions or in the gallery or advocating for issues that I cared about. I think what people want most to know is that they've genuinely been listened to, even if the outcome isn't always what they hoped for. They want to understand how and why a decision was made. And I don't think we'll ever get this perfectly right, but if the policy helps us listen a little better and communicate a little more clearly with our community, then it's a good thing. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tuai. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Yengi.
I'll just make this really brief. Thanks, Bernadette and Pradeep. Pretty much said everything I wanted to say. The only point that I'm just going to add to this and why this policy is really important, particularly for me, is because I think, now that we've got this policy, one of the things that I often hear from community in terms of, consultations and how they engage with us is that often they'll engage with council, attend consultations, but there's never been, that real focus on closing the loop. So being able to hear back from council on the decisions that were made, how their feedback was used, and or if not, why their feedback wasn't incorporated into the decisions that were made. So I think we've all collectively been really vocal about this community engagement policy and specifically highlighting the need for us to be able to respond to community better and to be able to close the loop. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this policy and, look forward to chatting to community and testing out how it's working and making sure that, we're living up to what we've put on paper.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Any other Councillor Opera?
I mean, everything has now well and truly been covered, but I would just say also that we have some really committed staff in this space, and I think we're making enormous progress in this area. It doesn't maybe always feel like it, but they were, obviously particularly interested in engaging well on the community engagement policy and integrating that feedback. And as we've already said, working on creating better and better processes and outcomes and transparency. So I'm very grateful that we have people who are as passionate, maybe as all of us, about it, because that's the only way that we're going to kind of meet and reach our own expectations and go beyond them.
Any other councillor? Councillor Lam.
Thanks, Mayor. I think community engagement is very, very important for our council because we need the community and we need the input and we need the feedback from the community so we can make a decision for the community. So therefore, I thanks again for the staff who's involved on this project, and I think it's really important, and I endorse that the comments.
Thank you, Councillor Lam.
Yeah.
Yep. With that being said, I think all councillors have touched on that beautifully. If I was to add something, the updated community engagement policy commits to broadening opportunities to engage particularly harder to reach groups, and I think that is very important. I think for good decision making to happen, we need to actively think about which voices aren't in the room and try to uplift and elevate those that require more tailored approaches to community engagement. I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Now move to agenda item 10.3, Putting Customers First Strategy 2026-2029. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lam.
That council, number one, endorse updating Putting Customer First Strategy 2026-29, shown at attachment 1 and following completion of page 2, community consultation. Number 2, note that the strategy will be supported by a separate internal action plan and related operational documents, including a customer charter, compliant policy, and unacceptable customer behavior policy. And number 3, note that implementation will be staggered over 3 years with progress to be reported regularly.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly. Our goal from the council goal is a customer first. It's very important with ethical governance and well-being and safety, environment, sustainability, and through community connected and commitment. So therefore, we put a customer first because it's so important to us, because we always work in consultation, community consultation, and listen to the community what they have been said. So, and we listen to implement and to make decisions wisely. That's why I'm supporting motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yep, just briefly, I think Councillor Cook-Lam has said a lot there. Like, it's really important to put the customers first, and that's it. I think that's a really important strategy. Thanks.
Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll just briefly add that customer service isn't necessarily just the person at reception or the person at the other end of your phone. It is any interaction that you have with any council staff, and this seeks to provide a clear shared framework to improve that experience across all teams and channels. I'd like to put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. Move to agenda item 10.4, Maribyrnong Integrated Transport Strategy. I'll call for Councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
Is that on? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. That Council 1 endorse the draft Integrated Transport Strategy, Associated Action Plan and Modal Maps shown at attachments 1 to 4 for Stage 2 community consultation for a period of 6 weeks from 17 June to 28 July 2026. 2, note that Stage 1 community consultation occurred from July to September 2024 and the feedback received informed the development of the draft Transport Strategy, Action Plan and Modal Maps. And 3, receive a further report with the final version of the Integrated Transport Strategy, Action Plan and Modal Maps that responds to the feedback received during the Stage 2 community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira, are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'll just say a few things. This is a long-awaited strategy which is going to guide Council's approach to how we plan for, manage, advocate for and engage the community in transport. As a geographically small, relatively flat municipality, we are a textbook case study for more sustainable and active modes of transport. We know that a vast majority of trips taken within the municipality are less than 5Ks and many of those trips are less than 2Ks. We're perfectly suited to walking, riding a bike or a short bus trip. I'm particularly pleased that within the ITS that we've included a theme, culture change and behavioural shifts, which includes people in transport considerations and planning, and I quote, normalising sustainable transport through everyday experience. I think that's really important. So often we can look at infrastructure without imagining the people who are going to use that infrastructure and how they're going to use that, and the same applies to transport infrastructure. So I'm hoping that by including that theme in there that we will have much more of a focus on the people part of transport. In addition, there's the short version, which I think is a great addition to the ITS, to the full document, which is quite long. So if you haven't got time to read the whole thing, you might read the short version, but you'll certainly get the gist of it. And I just wanted to read out something which is in the new document. It's the acknowledgement of country, which we we do include now in each of our strategies or action plans or frameworks. But I think this one, part of it really sums up I think, the essence of what the integrated transport strategy is trying to do. The end part of the acknowledgement says, in walking together, we can shape a future transport system that is more than efficient. It is a just, inclusive and reflective place, one that remembers where we've come from and moves forward with care. For me, that kind of wraps up where we started with this project but more importantly, where we've got to now with the new integrated transport strategy and the small version, and also the action and implementation plan. So please, everybody, participate in the consultation and tell us what you think, because I think it's a really good document. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Yep. And I've got here to start by thanking the team, because I know that they've been working on this relentlessly for a really long time. I'm sure you did as well, Bernadette. And yeah, they all have been very dedicated to the cause and the process. Our population is set to grow, and we do have to address our urban mobility limitations and obligations to ensure that our community is supported to enable movement and connectivity, as well as high-quality local amenity. This plan is a long-term coming, and I'm glad to see that it go out for community consultation, and yeah, very much do encourage everybody to get involved and provide your feedback. It's included is the strategy, the action plan, and lots of maps. Everyone here knows how much I love maps, so please explore them and imagine how you will travel, how you travel now, how you would like to be able to travel, and also how we can address other pressures that we're experiencing, like fuel prices, climate adaptation and mitigation, air quality, mental and physical health, and improving blue. How come they're leaving from my speech? Blue and improving blue, which is water-sensitive urban design, and green infrastructure, which is landscaping and trees. And I know our community has consistently demanded rapid expansion to active transport infrastructure and sensible connectivity to activity centres, public transport, schools, and other local amenities. So I'm glad to see us taking a big step forward in starting the process for delivering that. I do really hope we have a high-level engagement on this draft strategy, because it's important that we clarify and update it so that it genuinely reflects our community, and also so that we can move forward then with gusto to deliver mobility infrastructure that we need now, but also into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perrell. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Meredith.
Cool, thank you. I think they've said everything, but I just want to personally thank all of the staff involved in this process. It's been a really long, intensive process, and also the councillors for their engagement as well. But really, yeah, big thank you to all the staff who have put an incredible amount of hours into this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
I'll be very brief. Yeah, firstly, like Elena mentioned, this plan has been like the budget, has been a significant labour of love. So I want to thank our officers for putting this together. Sorry, not plan, strategy. This integrated transport strategy. It's taken a lot of work. There's been multiple iterations, and I think I can say for all of us that we have been very conscious and intentional about, what we wanted this to encompass. And just we're very, focused on ensuring that there's ease of movement for our community, and not just around their neighbourhoods, but also across the municipality. There was a lot of work put into the maps, and ensuring that we got those maps right as well, which is really important too. So just want to encourage community to review and provide input. This isn't just a plan for now, but this is a plan for our future, for our community. So we have to make sure we get it right.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Any other councillor like to add to the motion? Speak to the motion? Then I think all councillors that spoke covered that very well. What I would add to that is I myself am very excited about this. It's taken a tremendous level of work from officers, councillor input, and really excited to send this out to the community. So please add your feedback. As I keep mentioning, we are a rapidly growing community, and we need to start exploring sustainable modes of transport and how we get around our city. And for me, walking corridors, cycling corridors are an important part of that. With that being said, we'll put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. Sorry, yeah, there's no questions asked, but feel free to send the email and relevant. So,
Mayor, could I suggest we'd be happy to answer that question at the end of the meeting?
Yep. So if you are still here at the end, I'll also answer your question. If you do leave early, please send an email and we'll get the relevant director to respond. We'll move to agenda item 10.6. Footscray CBD Place Management Activation Model. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 notes the outcomes of community and stakeholder engagement undertaken on the proposed Footscray Place Management and Activation Model shown at attachments 1 and 2. 2, endorses the refined Footscray Place Management and Activation Model to be known as the Footscray Welcome Crew as shown at attachment 3. And 3, notes that the Footscray Place Management and Activation Model will commence from 1 July 2026 and operate as part of Council's broader Footscray revitalisation program.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Tawari. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. I am, of course, pleased that Council has moved away from a security-led response to experiences within the Footscray CBD. I think the Footscray Welcome Crew will be a welcome addition to Council's work in activating, cleaning and upgrading the CBD area. Thank you to the people who participated in the consultation process. It's definitely helped to further refine the model and ensure that there is clarity about the remit of the Welcome Crew. And we did have several questions about really trying to understand exactly how the Welcome Crew would operate, and the information in the report makes that very clear. I participated in the stakeholder workshop as a member of the future Footscray Working Group because I represent Council on that with the Mayor, and the discussions again provided much food for thought and gave Council some very clear ideas about what would make the model successful. The way of working that's focused on principles of human rights for all, non-judgmental, trauma-informed, culturally safe, will ensure that engagement with people in the CBD, particularly those with complex vulnerabilities, meets community expectations. The Footscray Welcome Crew Place Management and Activation Model description that's contained in the Council agenda is there for anyone to take and refer to should they need to. You can simply kind of download it and print it off and put it in your pocket if you like and take it with you. And I encourage everyone to get behind this approach so that together we can ensure that the Footscray CBD is a safe and welcoming space for all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Sure.
Councillor Pereira.
Yeah, just to add that I agree this is a big step forward in our approach to the complexities of Footscray. Again, it's not the answer to everything, but I think we've made a big step here, and we've also got a lot of other things happening in Footscray. And in particular, our Welcome Crew is a good opportunity to have an extension of Council into Central Footscray on a daily basis to ensure that the development of our other plans and strategies are also being super place-based and hyper-responsive to everybody who's using Footscray.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Now I move to agenda item 10.7, Shopfront Improvement Program pilot outcomes and revised delivery model. I'll call for Councillor to move a motion. Councillor Tawari.
That Council, 1, note the outcomes of the Business Facade Improvement Program pilot, and 2, endorse a revised Footscray Revitalisation Grants Program, offering grants of up to $3,000 for eligible businesses within the Footscray CBD, in line with the Footscray Revitalisation Grants Program guidelines shown at Attachment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. I call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to make a few brief comments on this item, as it originally came from a motion that I introduced. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that while the original program had good intentions, it simply wasn't working in the way that we had hoped. More than 20 businesses initially expressed interest in participating, but only 2 businesses ultimately took up the grants. And that tells us there wasn't a lack of interest, but there were barriers that prevented traders from taking part. I'm pleased to see that Council has listened to their feedback and adapted this model. By moving to a smaller, fully funded grants of up to $3,000, I think we now have an even greater opportunity to support local businesses and deliver visible improvements throughout the Footscray CBD. And I'd encourage as many traders out there as possible to consider applying, whether it's refreshing a shop front, improving signage, inviting window displays, or even commissioning a mural to help deter graffiti and bring colour and character to our streets. These small changes can make a real difference. And at the end of the day, attractive and vibrant shop fronts encourage people to stop, explore and spend time in our local businesses. That's good for traders, good for the CBD and good for the wider community. I look forward to seeing this revised program succeed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Yep. Only to say, if you're out there and you've got a business in Footscray CBD, consider applying. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to revitalise your shop front, whether it be, as Councillor Tawari said, through a mural or through a bit of paint. It's definitely a nice little offering here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. Move to agenda item 10.8, First Nations, developing the next First Nations plan. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 note the findings of the A, background and evidence paper shown at Attachment 1, B, First Nations planning options paper shown at Attachment 2, and C, First Nations consultation finding report shown at Attachment 3. 2, endorse the development of a new Reconciliation Action Plan under the Reconciliation Australia framework, reflecting contemporary policy settings including truth-telling, treaty and self-determination, and informed by ongoing engagement with traditional owners and First Nations communities. 3, note that the development of the new Reconciliation Action Plan will be informed through ongoing engagement with traditional owners, First Nations communities and key stakeholders. And 4, note that a draft Reconciliation Action Plan will be presented to Council for consideration in 2027.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I kind of want to talk about something that's absolutely related to this, but it's just an experience that I had last year and this year. I was fortunate to attend one of the days of the Walk for Truth last year, and from Werribee to Yarraville. And this year I walked the first day of the National Walk for Truth, both led by Travis Lovett, who was one of the co-commissioners of the treaty process in Victoria. And on that day, the Welcome to Country was truly an amazing experience, and I mean amazing as in I was completely blown away by it, and I felt immense privilege to have witnessed Uncle Bill Nicholson welcome Travis Lovett and other First Peoples to his country, which is Wurundjeri country. So just in light of that, I think developing a RAP was not my first choice, I don't think, of a new plan, but I really welcome the addition, which is at point number 2 in the recommendation of truth-telling treaty and self-determination, because that is where our First Peoples have taken us, and we've walked alongside them in a number of processes in this state, and truth-telling treaty and self-determination have formed part of, been a key part of those processes. So I think having it included in some way in the development of and the final kind of version of the reconciliation plan is really important. And I also, value those ongoing conversations that our council officers and councillors are having with traditional owners and local First Nations communities, and continuing to build relationships and to strengthen existing relationships with traditional owners and local First Nations people, because that is what will ensure that this new iteration of our reconciliation plan is one that is workable, respectful, and completely responds to our First Nations community. So I'm really looking forward to the process unfolding and being a part of that wherever I can. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Yep, sure. Just to congratulate the team on all the work that has gone into this plan, but also the really high quality of events and activities that I've seen undertaken in supporting our commitment to First Nations justice and truth-telling. I've been very encouraged by conversations with our First Nations staff and the engagement that they've been undertaking with local traditional owners. Obviously, we still have a lot more to do, but I can see a real care and commitment by everybody at Council in this space, and so I think that's an excellent starting point, and we'll continue to aspire to be better and better. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I think both councillors touched on it beautifully, so I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll move to agenda item 10.9, health registration application, shop 3148-120-200 Rosamond Road, Maribyrnong. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
It's not the Councillor Thomas show tonight, I assure you. That Council 1 ratify the decision made by Council's Delegated Coordinator Environmental Health on 19 May 2026 to refuse the application for a health registration at shop 120-200 Rosamond Road, Maribyrnong, under Section 77 of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, and 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer or their delegate to undertake all necessary actions to give effect to this resolution.
Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Meredith. Any points of clarification or questions? Would the member like to speak to the motion?
I just want to reiterate something which is in the officer report, just in case people are wondering why, if our council officer who has a delegation to refuse this has refused it and it's come to council. It's been refused by the Coordinator of Environmental Health, but to allow the applicant to seek a review of the process at VCAT, council has to ratify that decision. So that's why it's come to council. That's the important bit. It's not because our officer didn't do the right thing. It's simply because it allows gives the applicant their statutory rights to seek a review.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to agenda item 10.10, awarding of M9 contract 3683, reference 136626 for processing of food organics and garden organics. Can I get a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Thomas.
Okay. That Council 1 award M9 contract number 3683, internal reference 1366-26 for the processing of food organics and garden organics, FOGO, to repurpose it, Proprietary Limited RPI. A, for an initial term of 1 year and 10 months, commencing 1 July 2026 and expiring on 30 April 2029, and B, with 3 one-year extension options exercisable at Council's sole discretion. 2, note that the contract commences on 1 July 2026 on a non-guaranteed basis with no minimum volume or financial commitment by Council. 3, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute any contract variations. And 4, authorise the Chief Executive Officer or their delegate to execute the contract and exercise any of the available extension options on behalf of Council.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I call for the Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
The seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. Councillor Lam? I declare the motion carried. Move to agenda item 10.11, awarding of contract 132526, provision of Summerhill Road reconstruction. I'll call for Councillor to move a motion. Councillor Tawari.
That Council 1 award contract number 1305-25, provision of Summerhill Road reconstruction to Unite Southern Pty Ltd for the total contract sum of $4,507,365.65 ex-GST. I've got that. 2, know that funding for contract number 1305-25, provision of Summerhill Road reconstruction, associated project costs and provisional sum allowances is provided in the 2026-27 budget, subject to adoption of the 2026-27 budget, which we have done so. 3, authorises the Chief Executive Officer or their delegate to formalise and execute required documentation for contract number 1305-25, provision of Summerhill Road reconstruction to Unite Southern Pty Ltd, and authorises the Chief Executive Officer to approve variations to this contract in accordance with Council delegation.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. I call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Oh yes, just briefly. As one of the ward councillors, Summerhill Road is one of those projects that I've heard about time and time again from residents. So people have raised concerns about the condition of the road. They've written to us, spoken to us at community events and simply asked, when is something finally going to happen? So I think this is an important milestone. And I want to sincerely thank all of the residents who never stopped advocating for improvements and continue to raise this issue with council over many years. Community advocacy does matter, and this project is proof of that. I also want to thank our officers for the work that's gone into getting us to this point. A lot happens behind the scenes before a contract reaches this chamber, and that work deserves to be acknowledged. And of course, when the construction does happen, it'll bring some disruption, and I ask that we continue to communicate openly and clearly with residents throughout the process so people know what to expect and when. But after a long wait, we're finally moving from talking about Summerhill Road to actually delivering it. And I know many of the residents will be relieved to see this project progressing, and I'm very pleased to support this next step tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Tawari already said it all. I'm formally moved.
Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Yep. Well, we'll now move to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. Councillor Lam, can I use the vote? Yeah, but I declare the motion carried. Agenda item 10.12, awarding of contract 1234-23, provision of recycling receipt and processing services, proposed contract extension. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lena. Councillor Pereira.
Is this working? Yeah. That Council 1 endorse the extension of contract number 1234-23, the provision of recycling receipt and processing services for an estimated value of $3,309,804 37 with the revised termination date of 30th of June 2029, including adjustment for CPI and contingency. And 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer or the delegate to execute all documentation necessary to give effect to this contract extension and any future variations.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I would now put the motion to a vote. Oh, we're smashing this. Now move to agenda item 10.13, Climate Emergency Advisory Committee Review. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks. That Council 1, note the outcomes of the review of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee shown at attachment 1. 2, extend the term of the current Climate Emergency Advisory Committee by 12 months to 30 June 2027 to provide continuity of advice during the review and redevelopment of the Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan. 3, note that during the extension period, officers will implement improvements to meeting scheduling, agenda planning and action tracking identified through the review. And 4, request that officers provide Council with a brief update on the committee's contribution and the effectiveness of these improvements before the end of the extension period.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Lam. Any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just wouldn't mind saying a couple of words because the Mayor and I represent Council on this committee, and I think it's one of the most experienced and engaged community advisory groups that I've worked with at Council. They've provided highly informed input and feedback. They do homework in between meetings. They've asked for additional meetings, and they've engaged in other related processes like the integrated transport strategy that we heard about earlier tonight. So I fully endorse the extension of time, as I think it will mean that, of course, Council will continue to benefit from their expertise for just a little bit longer. And I'm pretty sure that when the officers go through the work of reviewing, the time that the committee has been together and with us, that there'll be a lot of positive feedback about how the committee has contributed to the Council's climate emergency work.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to say that expressing the sincere thank you to the advisory committee for their time and their effort to making the difference to the environment.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then I'll just reiterate Councillor Thomas's comments. I remember, our first meeting being blown away by the level of expertise that each committee member brought to the table. And as a council, I think we should feel privileged to have members of our community feel inclined to join our advisory committees and add value to our decision-making process. Because it takes obviously time, it's unpaid work, and these are individuals that are obviously very passionate about what they do and the area in which they live or work. I now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Agenda item 10.14, Governance Report, May 2026. I'll call for Councillor to move a motion. Councillor Meredith.
That Council note the May 2026 governance report.
I call on the councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. We will now move to notices of motion. Agenda item 11.1, Notice of Motion 2026-08, Social Justice Charter. I call for Councillor Bernadette Thomas to move her motion.
Thanks, Mayor. So the motion is that Council 1 recognises the important role in promoting equity, inclusion and social justice across the City of Maribyrnong, particularly in the context of growing social, economic and health pressures being experienced by the community. 2, acknowledges that the current social environment, characterised by cost of living pressures, housing stress, mental health challenges, increasing use of public space by vulnerable communities, and concerned about community safety and public amenity, requires a contemporary and coordinated policy response. 3, affirms its commitment to the Victorian Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities and to embedding human rights principles in all council decision-making and service delivery. 4, notes the Council has an established social justice framework 2022 to 33, which provides a foundation for Council's work in advancing equity, human rights and inclusion across services, planning and community engagement. 5, recognises the need to ensure that this framework remains current, relevant and responsive to emerging community needs, contemporary policy settings and Council priorities. 6, requests that Council officers undertake a review and refresh of the Maribyrnong Social Justice Framework 2023 to 33, including consideration of current and emerging social issues impacting the municipality, alignment with Council's strategic objectives, existing policies and service delivery approaches, and conducting a community consultation process to engage our community in the review process. And 7, requests a report be presented to Council outlining the findings of the review and a proposed updated social justice framework within the 2026-27 financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'll call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pero. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yep, just add a couple of extra things. Over the past year, our community has been tested. We've experienced a number of tragedies and the use of some of our public spaces has become an increasing site of debate. At a time when it feels like outrage and angertainment are a normal part of public discourse, when algorithms pit neighbour against neighbour and civility on social media feels hard to find, when we are living through multiple crises, cost of living, mental health, climate emergency, housing, biodiversity and extinction loss, public expressions of our values are needed. We thank our staff and communities for all they do and know that a renewed focus on our values and a stronger application of those values to our work is vital to ensure we can counter those who aim to divide us and those who seek to use our vulnerabilities against us. Rising division and hate means we cannot take our values for granted. The Council is a civic leader and has strong values, but greater public expressions of our values are needed. In times of crisis, we know that how we treat each other becomes even more important. How we use public spaces becomes more important. Being clear in our commitments to each other becomes more important, and supporting our communities and expressing our values publicly becomes more important. We can continue to support our communities and Council by demonstrating a renewed commitment to leadership on human rights, and we can apply this lens to all our work, and we can do so actively. The social justice framework is the lens through which this happens, and a review and refresh to ensure that it stays relevant to the experiences of our community is needed. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Only just to really second all of those comments, and that we're living in a polycrisis, we're inundated by atrocities around the world, we're obviously suffering enormous amounts of stress locally, food insecurity, housing instability, cost of living crises, plus climate and environment and fuel crisis coming down the line. And now more than ever, it's the connections and relationality that we form together with each other in community that are really going to galvanise us against these things. And so it's always important to make sure that we return time and again to these types of values and commitments to one another and in everything that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pero. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tuari?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just a brief comment. I don't think anyone around this table would disagree with other principles behind this motion. I think Maribyrnong has always had a strong social justice lens, and I see that reflected every day in the work our officers do and in the decisions we make as a council. We already support vulnerable residents through our services, advocate on issues like housing and inclusion, celebrate our diversity, and work hard to remove barriers to participation for people in our community. For me, I think the real measure of this motion is whether it improves outcomes for residents rather than simply repackaging work and values that we're already committed to delivering. And if this charter helps bring that work together, strengthens it, and reaffirms our commitment to those principles, then I think it's a positive thing. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tawari. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Yengi?
Yeah, just briefly, I suppose, echoing a little bit of what's already been said, but essentially, as Pradeep's already outlined, I mean, council's, already committed and works in accordance, all our work is in accordance with the Victorian Charter of Human Rights. However, this NOM, my understanding, has been put up because we've received and continue to receive some inquiries from residents about whether and or how our work aligns with these principles. And so we're hoping by explicitly articulating this commitment and making it visible across our platforms and policies, we aim to provide reassurance, and hopefully this will help ensure both our current community members and future residents to feel a bit more confident that our work is guided by and aligned with human rights principles, which it is, but hopefully this will, bring all of that together and provide the reassurance that others may be seeking.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then, yeah, I'll just reiterate what my fellow councillors have said. I think we all recognise the vital role council plays in promoting equity, inclusion and social justice across Maribyrnong, particularly as community pressures continue to grow. As Councillor Pereira had mentioned, we acknowledge growing pressures, cost of living, housing stress and mental health challenges, which directly impact residents' ability to live with dignity and security. And I myself am proud, to be in the city of Maribyrnong. And, I've seen firsthand the work that our officers do out in the community, delivering services and meeting community at different stages in their lives. But it's always good to, reiterate our underlying values and principles. I think a renewed framework will, provide a clear, integrated approach across how we improve our services and respond to those complex social challenges as they arise. But as, my councillors have expressed, I'm pretty confident that we're doing everything we can and are aligning with those charters as mentioned. With that being said, I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We'll go to agenda item 11.2, Notice of Motion 2026-09, Williamstown Road Heavy Vehicle Restriction. I call for Councillor Samantha Meredith to move her motion.
Thank you. That Council notes community concern regarding heavy vehicle movements on Williamstown Road, including truck volumes, the use of larger freight vehicles, road safety, residential amenity, and the availability of public truck count data. 2, rights to the Minister for Roads and Road Safety and the Department of Transport and Planning requesting that the Victorian Government, A, extend time-based no truck ban for A-double and B-double heavy vehicle combinations on Williamstown Road between the Westgate Freeway and Princess Highway to 24/7 no truck bans, and B, conduct regular truck counts on Williamstown Road, publish the data and provide comparison with pre-Westgate Tunnel truck movement data where available. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. I'll call a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Yengi. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah. Thank you. Williamstown Road has long carried heavy vehicle traffic due to its connection to the port, industrial areas and the broader freight network. Residents have raised concerns about truck volumes and A-double and B-double heavy vehicle combinations using Williamstown Road. While night and weekend truck curfews provide some protection, concerns remain about daytime movement of A-double and B-double heavy vehicle combinations and the impacts on residents, pedestrians, cyclists and other road users, along with air quality, noise and residential amenity. These vehicles can be up to 30 metres in length with impacts on the road, the noise, the amenity, pedestrians. So they're really, I think, a little bit too large to be on these residential streets. And residents have also raised concerns about the limited availability of public truck movement data, including regular truck counts and comparison with pre-Westgate Tunnel conditions where available. So this notice of motion seeks council support to request targeted restrictions on A-double and B-double heavy vehicle combinations and regular public reporting of truck movement data for Williamstown Road. And I'd also like to give a big thank you to Save Willie Road and Maribyrnong Truck Action Group for bringing this item to council as well. So, and thank you for your many years of advocacy to get the trucks off the truck bans that are existing. And I do encourage trucks to use the Westgate Tunnel because that's what it was built for, and the freeway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, obviously last year, the truck bans came into effect, and so I'm really grateful to our local member Katie Hall for putting in a lot of work advocating for this to take place. And yeah, I guess I'm in support of this motion because, it'd be good to get an extension of what currently exists and expand that out. Our community is calling for it. And so I think anything we can do to support that for our community, is really important, and we should, look at doing that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Yep, just to thank the ongoing work of very dedicated community members who continue to advocate for us and be our eyes and ears and noses on these key corridors around our municipality. We know that we're still seeing significant use of Williamstown Road and also seeing an increase in truck activity in other neighbouring communities, including Kensington. And I'm glad to support further progress on ensuring safe and livable amenity in our local areas, but also the utilisation of road corridors that are better suited for these heavy vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then with that being said, I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried, and I'd like to acknowledge members of the gallery that are still with us. We now have one final item on the agenda as it pertains to notice of motion. Okay, I will now vacate the chair.
Just grab my glasses too, otherwise I won't be able to read much. This is better spaced as well. I was having some very bad dyslexia moments. Oh, spacing, I tell you, I should have spaced that right. Okay, thank you. That was a good swap of chairs there, which I completely forgot about at the start of the meeting. So I will now read out agenda item 11.3, notice of motion 2026/10, closing the gaps, public lighting and community safety. I call for Councillor Mohammed Semra to move a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move that Council acknowledges community concerns regarding safety and amenity and the significant work already underway by Council to improve public spaces, including lighting upgrades, activation initiatives and revitalisation projects. 2, aims to further support community safety initiatives across the municipality with a focus on enhanced lighting, where lighting is a solution. And 3, request a further report be prepared and presented to Council outlining A, areas across the municipality where existing public lighting is inadequate or where gaps in lighting infrastructure have been identified. B, locations where poor lighting may be contributing to real or perceived community safety concerns, including but not limited to parks, walking paths, laneways, public open spaces, transport interchanges and activity centres. C, current processes for identifying and responding to lighting deficiencies, including how residents can report concerns. D, opportunities for Council to advocate to relevant authorities, including electricity distributors and state government agencies for upgrades to public lighting where responsibility does not sit with Council. And E, exploring a prioritised programme for future lighting improvements with consideration given to community safety, crime prevention, accessibility and pedestrian amenity.
Thank you. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Cook-Lamb, thank you. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Yes, Councillor Yengi.
Thank you. I suppose, Mayor, as the mover of the motion, I'm just wanting to ask if you'd be open to an amendment.
Please suggest the amendment.
Okay, great. So seeking to add in an additional point, point F maybe, just with some additional text, if that's okay. I'll read out the text.
Yep.
So basically, F, a review of the use of phosphor-converted amber, which is also known as PC amber lighting, for inclusion in future public lighting upgrades where appropriate, particularly in locations adjoining residential areas and environmentally sensitive corridors, in recognition of its potential benefits for residents and reduced disruption to nocturnal wildlife, subject to public safety requirements, technical feasibility and relevant standards.
I think that's a well-written addition. I'm willing to accept it.
Okay, thanks.
Just check.
Yep.
Governance have that. Yeah. Just check that's right, Councillor Yengi. Yeah.
Ask a question.
All good? Yep, great, thank you. A nice addition there.
Is it possible for me to ask a question on that amendment, if that's okay? With the Chair,
the seconder needs to agree to the amendment.
Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, the
Forgive me, councillors, the seconder also needs to agree to the amendment.
Oh, okay.
Do you agree to the amendment?
Yeah, I agree.
Mover agree with that? I'm happy with it.
Yep.
Can I ask my question now?
Yep, Councillor Tawari, you can ask your
well,
question.
My question to Councillor Yengi is, what is a phosphor-converted amber, PC amber lighting?
Is basically, it's obviously a form of lighting, but it's amber light, LED based, but not the same as the regular LEDs. And there's been some recent, research that's been undertaken around this type of lighting. And I know there's a council in South Australia, Salisbury City Council, that's implemented this across its municipality, and it's basically designed to emit sort of an amber sort of tone of light, which is meant to be softer and more friendly for, like wildlife, but also providing some lighting. So in areas where, rather than having the really bright regular LED light, this amber lighting is meant to be, better for wildlife, because it doesn't necessarily, block out like it doesn't interfere with like the moon lighting, which is essentially how the wildlife, at night time, nocturnal wildlife, they move according to the moon lighting, and so the regular LED light affects that, whereas this one doesn't affect it so much. And but also from a safety standpoint, it's meant to be a little bit better, so it doesn't draw the same level of attention to people in those spaces as the usual LED lights, but it still provides some form of lighting without it necessarily drawing the attention that regular LED lights would draw. I hope that answers it a little bit.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-on question, a very short one?
You can ask a follow-up question.
Just you've got there to safety and technical feasibility. Would you be open to adding like a financial feasibility? Because what if we can't afford it, then means we can't do it at all. Can I, if the mover's okay with that, to add the word financial feasibility as well as technical feasibility?
Yep, I'm happy to add financial there.
If you're okay with that, and if...
Cook.
Yes, I'm also happy with that.
It's fine, but essentially these lights are actually cheaper also. They cost roughly about $72 a year to like...
People charge council
to do,
more.
yeah, like $72 a year to to have them sort of serviced and also implemented, whereas the regular lights that most councils use cost about $242 per light. This is $72, so it is actually much cheaper for us to have these.
That's even better.
As well, yeah.
Thank you. That's all. That's all I have.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
We got that?
Yeah, do I have a question around whether somewhere within this report or response there will also be a summary of adherence to the SEPTED principles, the crime prevention through environmental design, and also our nature plan objectives.
So in relation to your first question, as answered before, I think that's standard practice in how officers do this type of work. And also, I think the aim of the motion isn't to, direct officers into how they carry out this work. I think there's the relevant, expertise there to identify what's the best methods to conduct this piece of work. So, yeah. And I would believe that in considering a report, the lighting policy, for example, would be used to feed into some of this work, as well as any other documents. As highlighted here, it does say where lighting is the solution, and it's limited in its approach to specifically look at community safety.
Yeah, I guess it's just to make sure that we also highlight where it's not the solution, explanatory commentary around that might refer to SEPTED principles in order to make sure that people understand that, as you've said, that lighting isn't always the solution.
I'll ask the relevant officer, which would be Patrick, what would the advice be from an officer perspective in adding or not adding?
Sorry, can I just clarify the question?
This notice of motion is asking for a report on particular things. It's not actually doing the work. So the report would need to be received first, and then we would be doing the work. So I understand what Councillor Pereira is asking for, but I'm not sure that that's within the confines of the notice of motion at this point until it's a report.
If we're going to move forward with work, then having a clear direction that includes SEPTED and our nature plan objectives is useful. Otherwise, we have to refer back to it separately. Perhaps it's just something around the point that says, oh, that's way too small for me to read. Exactly where you've put where appropriate, if it's appropriate.
Councillor Pereira? So Councillor Pereira, can I just stop you there for a second? Could you please just bring your microphone just a little bit closer, please?
Yes, that's
Thank you.
Where lighting is the solution. Maybe it's also to say and clarify that it conforms to SEPTED principles and our other plans and strategies, including the nature plan. Just provides a bit more clarity around why lighting might not always be the solution.
Yeah, so I'm happy to include it in that.
Just in that
Yeah,
line.
yeah, so in that line.
Yeah.
But I'm just a bit hesitant to, in case obviously, that's work for the officers. But if that isn't limiting or overstepping.
Up to the mover if you want to accept it, and then the seconder. So are we clear on what you're considering?
I'm happy to add that after it says where lighting is the solution, in the event that it does not obviously take away from the intent of the motion to focus on safety when conducting the work.
SEPTED is safety-based principles.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. So how would it read?
From the governance perspective too.
Yeah.
Councillors, we'll need to have some wording to be considered for the motion. So what wording would you like, Councillor?
What's the wording, Councillor Pereira?
What did I just say before? It was really good. Where lighting is the solution and following SEPTED principles. Over here and SEPTED principles. And existing strategy, SEPTED. It's CP, SEPTED. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so just checking in with the mover and the seconder. Are you in agreement with this?
I am not. I would rather read and according to accepted principles and relevant documents, council documents as opposed to a specific one. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. I'm willing to accept according to accepted principles and relevant documents.
Okay, are we happy with that?
CEO, sorry, Deputy Mayor, sorry, just a procedural point. Councillors should not be engaging in debate over motions. You either accept them or you don't.
Yep. Yep, I'm willing to accept that.
If the mover happy with that, I'm happy with it.
Oh, good.
Okay, thank you. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes.
We got that.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I move this motion because community safety is an issue that continues to be raised with councillors across our municipality, particularly around how people experience our public spaces after dark. The purpose of this motion is simple: to better understand whether there are gaps in public lighting provision and where improvements may be needed. This is not a motion asking council to install lights everywhere, nor is it suggesting lighting is the only solution to safety concerns. It is about gathering the evidence we need to make informed decisions about where investment, advocacy, or improvements may be required. We know that the way people feel about and use public spaces matters. A poorly lit pathway, park, transport connection, or activity area can impact whether someone feels comfortable walking, exercising, catching public transport, or participating in community life. As councillors, we hear these concerns directly from residents. People are not asking for more reports for the sake of reports. They are asking for practical solutions and for council to understand where issues exist. This motion is a practical first step before we can prioritise future works, we need to understand where the gaps are, what locations require further attention, and how this aligns with our broader goals around accessibility, activation, and community wellbeing. I acknowledge Council already has a lighting policy adopted in 2018. This motion does not seek to replace the policy, rather it provides an opportunity to assess whether our current approach continues to meet the needs of a changing municipality. Since 2018, our community has grown, new developments have occurred, and expectations around safety, accessibility, and the use of public spaces have evolved. It is entirely appropriate that we continue to review whether our frameworks remain fit for purpose. Good governance means listening to our community, understanding the challenges they experience, and using evidence to guide our decisions. So, the question, I think, for us tonight is not whether lighting alone solves community safety challenges. It is whether we should understand where gaps exist and whether our residents' concerns deserve an evidence-based response. I believe they do, and I really hope Council will support this motion.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think the public lighting is playing a very important role in the community, because if they can accessible and welcome and the public play in the park, and improving visible, particularly the winter time, and people can give more opportunity that can accessible to the public transport in the community and the enjoyment after work or the evening hour. So this is very important, and I congratulating the mayor that put that the motion up, and I think really I'm support that reason for that.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Yep. Sorry, Councillor Tuara.
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Thanks, Chair. I just want to acknowledge and support the motion, but I also want to say that I learnt two things today: phosphor-converted amber lighting and also CPT-ED principles. So thank you to the councillors who raised that. Sometimes it's just the simple things that make the biggest difference in people's daily lives, and I think public lighting is one of them. I appreciate that public lighting isn't universally welcomed and that there are legitimate concerns around light spill, environmental impacts, and the fact that lighting alone won't solve all community safety issues. But I don't think this motion is saying that every dark space should automatically have floodlights installed. What I think it's saying is that we should identify and understand where people genuinely don't feel safe. And myself personally, I've heard from residents, particularly women, older residents, shift workers, and people using public transport early in the morning or late at night, who have told me there are places where they simply don't feel safe because it's too dark. And whether it's walking home from the station, taking the dog for a walk, or going on an evening exercise, or just getting A to B, everyone deserves to feel safe in their own neighbourhood. I don't think it's about choosing one group over another. It's about listening to people's lived experiences, considering all of the impacts and finding the right balance. And if there are practical improvements we can make that help people feel safer and more connected to their community, then I think it's worth exploring them. I want to thank the Mayor for bringing this motion forward. Often residents ask for practical things that improve their quality of life, and I think better lighting can be one of those things. So thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chair.
Cool. Thank you. Would anybody else want to speak to the motion? Yep. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks. Just want to first acknowledge an email that Council has received from a resident about the title of the motion, using the phrase "closing the gap," which is most commonly known in relation to issues of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, education, employment, housing and justice, and used in this case may cause offence to those people. And I know this is not the Mayor's intention, but I think it goes to that conversation we had earlier about the reconciliation plan and treaty and truth-telling, about respect. So I did want to raise that because somebody very clearly in the community had noticed that and emailed councillors about that earlier today. I understand the Mayor's intention with the motion. Some people in our community report feeling unsafe across the city, and that's not something that we want for our residents or visitors. And there are many reasons why people feel unsafe. Lighting may be one of them, but it's not the only reason. And the original focus of the motion on lighting, and even with the inclusion that Councillor Pereira has suggested around the crime prevention through environmental design, still limits, I think, any responses to this issue by council or the community or our partners or government or local businesses or local community groups. An integrated look at this issue will better serve our community. Council already, as the Mayor mentioned, has a public lighting policy, and this outlines where public lighting will be installed and where it should be avoided. It says where nighttime activity is discouraged, such as playgrounds, where lighting could provide a false sense of safety, such as remote spaces or trails, and where it may adversely affect native fauna in natural bushland settings. Perhaps a call for this policy to be reviewed may have been a better approach, which would then lead to those practical solutions the Mayor is after, informing implementation across various council services. And I also think the addition of the phosphor-converted amber lighting that Councillor Yengi has asked to include would probably be suited better to a review of the public lighting policy as well. Earlier tonight, a resident asked a question during public question time about integrating questions of lighting with existing community safety, with public realm, with transport, placemaking and infrastructure planning frameworks to ensure that it complements rather than duplicates existing work and isn't conducted in isolation of these other issues, which I fear perhaps it will be. So I understand the intention of the motion, but I think the approach is limited in scope and a little convoluted now that we've added a few more things in on the run, and lacks that holistic approach that I think is needed to respond to issues of community safety.
Yeah. Would the mover like to exercise their right to reply?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, for raising those questions. But respectfully, the purpose of this motion is not to rewrite Council's approach to community safety. It is a targeted request to understand whether there are gaps in lighting infrastructure that residents are experiencing today. The existing lighting policy provides an important framework, but after 8 years, it is reasonable to assess whether there are emerging issues, changing community expectations, or areas specifically that warrant further attention. And this motion simply seeks that evidence. And I also anticipate that any report arising from this motion would consider Council's existing lighting policy and any community needs, particularly given, as I would reiterate, it was 2018. And I think the installation of an individual light that can be looked at as operational, but understanding where lighting gaps exist across our municipality, identifying priorities and addressing the community's concerns around safety, which are real, which I hear every day from people across Maribyrnong. So this motion isn't about choosing individual light poles tonight. It is about making sure when Council does make decisions, they are based on evidence and community needs, and that we show our community that we acknowledge that safety is a pressing issue for them right now, as opposed to, leaving this for the next couple of years to go unaddressed.
Cool. Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. Thank you. The motion is now carried. Thanks. Yep. Councillor Mohammed Semra to take the chair.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We now move to councillor question time. Councillors, are there any questions? No questions. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? There are no confidential business to be tabled at today's meeting. Just want to again acknowledge our members in the gallery. Thank you so much for, waiting the entire time. And I remember you did have a question, and we'll be sure that someone can answer your question today. I declare the meeting closed at 9:30 p.m.